Assalamu alaikum dear students. Today we will be studying a topic from the 9th grade which is called as carbohydrates. So first I would introduce the subtopics that we will have to take a look. Okay, in this lesson you will study what carbohydrates are, their nomenclature or how you name them, and then you will study the types of carbohydrates on the basis of the sugar molecules present, which are monosaccharide, oligosaccharides, and polysaccharides. Okay, now let's, before I discuss it according to chemistry, let me tell you that carbohydrates are present in a large variety of different stuff, and carbohydrates are organic. So you can get carbohydrates in sugar, in vegetables, fruits, pulses, nuts, cereals, and even dairy products like milk, cheese, yogurt, and stuff. Okay, now let's take a look at the definition of carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are basically they're also called as sugars or saccharides. Saccharides and sugars have the same meaning, but according to chemistry, they are the polyhydroxyaldehyde or polyhydroxyl ketones, which I will discuss in the further slides. And carbohydrates are composed of carbon. They're composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. These three atoms or elements have to be present in the carbohydrates, and they are an important class of the organic compounds. So there's a general way or the general formula to represent carbohydrates, which is Cn, then an open bracket H2O, close it, and then another N. But this formula is just it's not for all of the all of the carbohydrates. It's just for the simple carbohydrates such as glucose. So you can write glucose as C6H12O6, or you can write it in this way. Just take see, you can write C6, then open a bracket H2O, then close it, write another 6 here. Some other very common examples of the carbohydrates are glucose, fructose, cellulose, starch, lactose, maltose, glycogen, and saccharose. And before this definition, the polyhydroxyaldehyde or polyhydroxyl ketone, there used to be another definition which said that carbohydrates are the hydrates of carbon. That means whenever carbon forms a bond with H2O, that will be called as carbohydrates. But then later on they found out that this definition was not wide range, so they gave this new definition for that. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the nomenclature, or how do we name carbohydrates. Just like almost all the organic compounds, carbohydrates also don't have a single way of naming them. They have common names, and they have even more than one common name. But this nomenclature is based on the type of the functional group attached to it. So we discussed that carbohydrates are polyhydroxyaldehyde and ketones. So if you take a look at this compound is this is the structure of glucose. So glucose, from our previous knowledge, we know that aldehyde is a functional group of carbon, double covalent bond with an oxygen, and single covalent bond with a hydrogen. So glucose contains an aldehyde functional group. Okay, so it will be classified as aldose carbohydrate. Aldo is taken from the word aldehyde, and OSE or O's means that it's a sugar or it's a carbohydrate. Now let's take a look at this one. This is called ribose, or it's also called as pentose. As I said, they don't have a single name. So pentose means that this compound as a whole will have 5 carbons. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 carbons, and it has a aldehyde functional group, carbon, double covalent bond with oxygen, and single covalent bond with a hydrogen. Here also this compound is called as glyceraldehyde. Here also it has an aldehyde functional group. Now let's take a look at this compound. This compound right here has a functional group of ketones, so it will be named as ketoses. See, it has carbon, double covalent bond with oxygen, and on both sides we have an an alkyl functional group attached. So that will be termed as ketose. This is the same example as it's written here. Here they have written it as aldose, or an aldehyde containing carbohydrate functional group, and since it has 3 carbons, so it will be called as triose. And here this glucose has 6 carbons, so it will be called as hexose. And one more thing, that now let's go back to the definition that we just gave. We said that carbohydrates are the polyhydroxyaldehyde or polyhydroxyl ketones. So as you you can see that they have many OH groups, which is called as hydroxyl, and then they have a ketone or aldehyde functional group. So that's where the definition actually comes from. So now let's discuss the types of carbohydrates on the basis of simple sugar units present per molecule. So on that basis, carbohydrates are divided into three types: monosaccharides, oligosaccharides, and polysaccharides. So let's discuss the monosaccharides first. Mono means one and saccharine means sugars. So what I mean by this is that if you want to break down these sugar molecules, you cannot further break them down into other sugar molecules. Now I will show you by an example. This is a glucose molecule, which is a monosaccharide. If I want to further break this glucose, I will not be having any other carbohydrate. It could further be broken down into carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but not to another carbohydrate. So that's what I mean by monosaccharides. And monosaccharides are sweet, they're soluble in water, and they are also colorless. Some of the very common examples are fructose, glucose, galactose. So now let's take a look at the structure of glucose. This one on the top is called, this is the structure of glucose. Each point here is a carbon. When you don't write anything, that means there are carbons. And this is the structure of fructose. They are the ring structures of the carbohydrates, but they actually exist in this form, in an open form. This is glucose and that's fructose. If you put them inside the water or if you make an aqueous solution, they're going to change into the ring shaped structures. Now let's talk a little bit about oligosaccharides. Oligo means some and saccharine, again, it means sugar. So what are these compounds, or which kind of carbohydrates are they? So if you break these oligosaccharides, they're going to break down further into 2 to 10 units of monosaccharides or simple sugars. Now once I discuss its further types, it will be clear. So the first type is called as disaccharide. Disaccharide, as the name suggests, it's made up of two sugar molecules or two monosaccharides linked together and they form a disaccharide. Suppose, these are the examples like maltose, lactose, and saccharose. Maltose is a type of carbohydrate which is made up of combination of two glucose molecules. It's present in large variety of fruits. Then we have lactose, which is present in milk, and it's formed as a result of the monosaccharides galactose and glucose reaction. And then we have saccharose, or the sugar, the table sugar that we use. It's made up of glucose and fructose. This is the structure of saccharose. I said that saccharose is made up of glucose plus fructose. This is how the saccharose looks like. So if I want to hydrolyze it, or if I want to react it with water, it's going to break down from here and it's going to make a glucose and a fructose. That's why this is called as disaccharide. Then trisaccharide, as the name suggests, it contains 3 monosaccharides per molecule. Or you can say that if you break this disaccharide, it's going to give you 3 monosaccharides. So some common examples are maltotriose and raffinose. Maltotriose is made up of 3 glucose molecules, and it's produced by the digestive enzyme of the human beings. And then we have raffinose, which is produced as a result of reaction of glucose, fructose, and galactose, and it's present in large variety of plants or vegetables like asparagus, broccoli, and zucchini. Okay. At the end, we will discuss polysaccharides or complex sugars. So polysaccharides are made up of, they are those carbohydrates which are made up of a large number of monosaccharide units, that is more than 10 units. Okay, it says poly means many. Okay, and they're not sweet, they're not soluble in water, and as you may think, like other carbohydrates, but they're just not soluble in water and they're not sweet. And since they are made up of large number of monosaccharide molecules, that's why their molecular mass is also high, and they are called as bipolymers. Okay, some examples are like cellulose, starch, dextrine, and glycogen. Here we have these two examples, like this is cellulose and that's starch. They're both made up of the glucose molecules linked to each other and they form a long chain. Cellulose is present inside the plants and human beings are unable to digest it. And starch is also present inside the plants, but human beings are able to digest it. The type of bond formation here is different, but still they're both made up of the glucose monosaccharides combined together and forming a long chain.